All looks fine. Thank you, Rebecca. And we'll see, hopefully y'all can hear me still. The other day, the sound went off when I started trying to record. So anyway. All right. So, and I'm on the screen. That's good. So I am recording. This is Gentle Flow Yoga. And we do a lot of mini flows to warm up muscles and body. And then we do some standing poses. And then we do warmed cool downs at the end. And so glad you are here today. My name is Deb. So if you have any comments too, I have the chat open. So this will be recorded. So I won't see your chats unless you're here today with me. So I like to start in a comfortable seated position. If you'd rather start standing, you can. But finding our comfortable seated position, could sit with straight legs, could sit cross-legged, could sit on your shins in a kneeling position. So finding your comfortable seated position, focusing on your breath and letting your breath lengthen. Nice, long, slow inhales and long, slow exhales. Finding that steady breath, the even inhale and exhale helps us to steady our body, mind, and spirit. Just letting that breath flow freely. Allowing ourselves to arrive in the yoga practice mentally and physically. And as we're ready, gently letting our heads come forward, chin toward the chest, giving the back of the neck a nice stretch, rolling our heads toward the right shoulder, releasing the left side. Allowing our heads to come forward, chin toward the chest, rolling our heads toward the left shoulder, releasing the right side. Allowing our heads to come forward, chin toward the chest, lifting our heads and gently opening our eyes, reaching out in front, letting those shoulders shrug forward, rotating our wrists in both directions, pausing with our palms facing each other, wiggling those fingers around a little. Bring those arms into the shoulder sockets, holding firm in the core as we reach overhead, lengthening away from the body with an inhale. Exhale as we anchor into the shoulder sockets. Inhale, lengthen up. Exhale, and anchor down in. So that was all for warming up our shoulder blades. Bending the elbows, palms away from midline, coming down. Then we'll roll our shoulders back and down, lift our elbows up behind. We can have our fingers on the floor. Or if the hands are away from the floor, press those arms toward each other. Try to keep the core nice and long. So we're working the core strongly here. Finding our breath, we're opening the front side of the shoulders. Then bending the elbows, reaching out in front, interlacing, pressing palms away. We're giving those hands and wrists a little warm up before going to our downward dogs and table positions later. Bending the elbows, changing the interlace. So put the other pinky finger on the outside, press away again. Could stay here with the arms or lift overhead or somewhere in between. Option to bend those elbows if our shoulders don't like straight arms overhead. Lifting and lengthening one side of the body and then the other. So lifting and lengthening more than tilting to the side, just waking up the sides of the ribs. Pausing in the center the next time we're there, anchoring arms into the shoulder sockets, gently looking toward the ceiling, finding that breath. Looking straight ahead, bending the elbows, releasing up, coming down. Finding our nice long straight spines, bringing left hand on the left rib, sweeping across the belly, looking over that right shoulder. Inhale and lengthen to unwind. So we're not pulling ourselves around. We're using our core muscles to do the spinal twist. Second side, sweeping across the belly, looking over that left shoulder. Breathing. Inhale and lengthen to unwind. Then we'll come to table position. So stacking wrists under shoulders, knees under hips. Nice sturdy table, rounding our spines toward the ceiling for cat stretch. letting the belly go toward the floor for cow pose. Exhale as we round the spine up. Inhale as the belly goes toward the floor. So that kind of keeps us from going too far toward the floor. We don't want to overextend that belly toward the floor. So breathing and flowing, we're massaging the discs in our backs, bringing fluids around all the vertebrae and discs. Pausing in our table position, turning and looking toward that left hip, stretching the right side of the body. Coming back to center table, turning and looking toward the right hip, stretching that left side. Breathing. Coming back to center table, walking toes toward the back of the mat, walking hands toward the front of the mat. Head could come down in between the arms, anchoring arms into the shoulder sockets. Keep that belly button lifted. So we want our spines to be nice and long and strong. Pausing here in puppy pose. Head could be in between the arms. If the shoulders are not comfortable there, head could be above the arms. And we could do our side puppy stretches, walking hands to the left side of the mat. That center arm can reach out farther, giving that right rib cage a nice stretch. Ease up on that stretch, coming back to center puppy. Second side puppy, walking hands to the right side of the mat. That center arm can reach out farther on the mat, giving that left rib cage a nice stretch. Ease up on that stretch, coming back to center puppy. Then we're going to do passive puppy, bringing hands back toward us, one hand length, elbows to the floor. Could widen those elbows out so our forehead can come to the floor. We want the forehead to be resting on something. If the floor is too far away, we can stack our fists or hands. We also have the option to keep the hips lifted in passive puppy or settle those hips closer to the heels for more of a child's pose. You decide where you can go comfortably for this first just resting pose. This is child's pose or passive puppy. You can come here anytime you want to take a break during the class. Reaching out in front for extended child's pose. This is one of my favorites. Inner upper arms can get a nice stretch here. Hands are shoulder width apart or a little bit wider. We'll inhale forward to kneeling plank. Exhale back toward child's pose. Inhale forward, could exhale to elbow bend. Inhale straighten. Exhale child's pose or passive puppy. So we can do just a tiny elbow bend and we still do good for upper body work. If we want to go all the way to crocodile, we hover with the upper arms parallel with the floor so the shoulders do not go all the way to the floor. And we exhale, elbow bend, inhale, straighten, and inhale forward, exhale, bend, inhale, straighten, exhale, child's pose or passive puppy. So we're doing one movement, one motion, one breath, one movement, one breath, if we can. So you're doing your own pace. I might be going faster or slower than you, but you can do your own pace. Then let's hold in our kneeling plank. So I like to do a little bit of a core warm up here. I like to let elbows come to the floor. If your wrists are getting tired, go elbows to the floor. Walk those knees back a little farther so that we are in our kneeling forearm plank. And then we already feel that we're using our core to stay here, right? We could curl the toes under, lift one knee away from the floor and lower, lift the other knee and lower. We could lift both knees and lower, or we could lift both knees and hold. So in all of our poses, I cue core. So this helps us really find our cores. And so you'll know what I mean when I'm talking about it in our standing poses even. Knees to the floor. Walking elbows and knees toward each other. We'll come all the way up to a kneeling position and we'll do our gate pose. So let's step that left leg out to the side. Could stay right here. Could widen that leg out farther for more of an inner thigh stretch. Could straighten that leg for the classical gate pose position, toes pointing at the same direction we are facing. Or we go back to the bent knee if that's better for your knee. I like this one better these days. My knee likes it better. So hand on the hip crease, opposite arm reaching out and up, lengthening toward the ceiling. This is gate pose. We could do a side bend in our gate pose if we want to. Breathing. Firm the core. Bend that top elbow to give us a little momentum to lift back up. Bringing that leg underneath us, we'll step that second leg out to the side. Could widen that leg out. Could stay with a bent knee. Could straighten that leg. Like I said, I like the bent knee better these days. Hands on the hip crease. Opposite arm out and up. Could stay here. Could add that side bend toward that leg that's out to the side. Breathing. Firm the core, bend that top elbow, palm toward the floor as we lower that arm down. Bring that leg in. We'll come back to our table position. Straightening left leg out behind. We'll lift and lower that left leg so we're warming up for our spinal balance. We want to keep the body really steady. We're just moving that leg up and down, or we can bend the knee, bring it in underneath the body if we want to warm up that range of motion as well. That's our sun dog flow. Then holding that leg out behind us, opposite arm reaching out in front. Breathing in our spinal balance. Fingers and toes could be touching the floor. We don't have to have them lifted away or lifted away just a little or all the way up to parallel with the floor. We try not to go any higher than that. Hand and knee back to table. Straighten that right leg out, lifting and lowering that right leg. Firm core, long spine, gazing at the floor. Bending the knee if you want to do that sun dog variation. Bringing the knee in underneath the belly, but we don't have to do that. Holding that leg out behind us, straight, parallel with the floor, arm, opposite arm out in front. Fingers and toes could be touching the floor or lifted away. Back to table. We're going to do a spinal balance flow. So opposite arm and leg can reach out and touch the floor or be lifted away from the floor and then back to table. And we're going to exhale as we reach out, inhale as we come back to table. Some of us have been practicing with that sun dog variation in there. You can have that in there as well, but you don't have to. So this is really good for our core and lower back. Breathing, flowing. Next time we are even on both sides. Let's pause in our table position. Then we're going to do our kneeling side plank. So I'm going to turn my backside to you so you can see what I'm doing with my feet. So watch the feet. Kickstand that left foot out to the side. We'll open that right side body. Stacking shoulders and hips. And that top hand can reach out in front, coming closer to that top ear. Let's take an ah breath here. Nice long inhale with a little bit of a sigh on the exhale. Bringing hand back to hip, lifting head in line with spine. Can lift and lower that top leg. So we're working on those abductors, the abductors in that top leg. Breathing. We could also do a soccer kick. We could reach that leg out in front of us and slightly behind if you want to add that, but you don't have to. Then holding in line with the body. Foot can stay lifted for kneeling half moon. Foot can go to the floor for kneeling side plank. Top hand can stay on that top hip, or top hand could lift toward the ceiling. If your head moves easily here, we could turn and look to the ceiling. Breathing. So my goal in class is always to have all of our muscles and joints move during our class. Looking straight ahead, hand to the hip, foot to the floor if it's not already there, back to table, and we'll kickstand that second foot out. So kickstand that right foot out. We'll open that left side body, stacking shoulders and hips, top arm reaching out in front. Nice big side stretch, maybe that ah breath. Bringing hand back to hip, lifting head in line with spine. Can lift and lower that top leg. And we can do that soccer kick or not. We don't have to. I give lots of options and variations. So do what works for you. Holding in line with the body. Foot can stay lifted or go to the floor. Top hand can stay on the hip or lift up. Final option could turn and look to the ceiling if that works for our necks. Breathing. If something doesn't work, go back to what we were doing previously, like looking straight ahead. Top hand to the hip, foot to the floor, knee and hand back to table. Toes together, knees wide. We'll settle back into a wide knee child's pose. And maybe shifting those hips side to side. Now that we warmed up the hips and lower back, just giving them time to release a little bit before we go on. Then let's come on to our bellies. And we're going to do a little bit of cobra pose. So arms are alongside the shoulders, palms and elbows on the floor. Press the toes into the floor, firming legs and buttocks, lifting just the hands away from the floor, noticing how that puts our shoulder blades onto our rib cage. If we want to lift higher up, heart center and head can lift a little higher. If we want to lift higher up, lift those elbows up off the floor. So this is the most work we can do here in our cobra with this variation. Then coming back down. We'll do a couple more cobras. Pressing into the floor, firming legs and buttocks, lifting hands, lifting heart center and head. Could lift elbows. Breathing in our cobra. Coming back down. Just noticing all those muscles we use when we do all that. Pressing into the floor with the feet, lifting hands, lifting heart center and head. Could lift elbows. Working, breathing. Lowering back down, bringing those elbows in underneath the shoulders, and we will come back to our table position. Then we'll do down dog. Step those hands forward, curl the toes under. We'll lift up to our downward dog. We'll walk those heels up and down, release the neck and head. Breathing, waking up the feet, the toes. First down dog of the day, try to press the base of the index finger into the floor. That part of the hand often lifts up. Lifting up onto the balls of the feet, sit bones are the highest part of the body. Knees could still be bent in our downward dog. And then bend the knees a lot. We'll walk those feet forward to forward fold. Hands can be on thighs, shins, feet, floor. Give support for the back. I like elbows on thighs. And then I can really let go of the neck and the head. So if you have tension in the neck and the shoulders, this is a really nice supported position for the back, but letting go of that neck and head. Noticing if our feet are hip width apart and parallel, let's lift halfway up to monkey pose. Exhale, forward fold. Keep those knees soft, lifting halfway up, monkey pose. Exhale, forward fold. Then we're going to lift up through monkey. We can press off the thighs or circle sweep out, lifting up through monkey to vertical body, bringing hands to heart center. We're going to do a little chair flow here. Soften those knees going in the same direction as the toes. And we lift back up to vertical body mountain pose. And then we bring hands to heart center. So we've been doing a lot more with sound in our gentle flow classes. And I like to exhale with a hum called bee's breath. And we can flow in and out of our chair, warming up all the muscles and joints that we are using as we move through this flow. Pausing at the top the next time we're there, anchoring those arms into the shoulder sockets, lifting the arches in the feet. Make your mountain pose really strong. Looking toward the ceiling perhaps, or keeping the gaze straight ahead if that's better for your neck. Then looking straight ahead, bringing hands to heart center, bending knees, swan dive, forward fold, left foot back to lunge, right foot back, down dog. We can do a straight leg plank flow, inhale forward, exhale back. Could add three-legged plank into three-legged dog. If we want to do that flow, could add the elbow bend at the front. So it depends what you want to work on. I told you I'd give you lots of variations, lots of options, and then you choose. You could just do the three-legged dog. You don't have to do the three-legged plank. So make this your own. Next time we are even on both sides. If you've done any of those variations, pausing in our down dog, then come forward, pause in our plank. Breathing, using those core muscles that we found earlier. Let those knees come to the floor. Lift our hands off the floor, shake out those wrists. We'll step that left leg forward. And that kneeling thigh might be getting a nice stretch. If we want extra cushion under that kneeling knee, the right knee, we can fold the edge of the mat over. If we want more stretch in that kneeling thigh, we can lift up out of the hips, could look toward the ceiling. Option to do more of a back arch here if we keep that core support that we found in our cobra, and we could go toward a half a camel pose. Then firm the core, bring the body back to vertical. The hand that's out on that bent knee can slide back toward the hip. And we're doing another spinal twist. Spinal twists are great for our core, great for our organs. Inhale and lengthen to unwind. Excuse me. Hands can go to the floor. Right hand can stay on the floor. Left hand can lift to that left hip. This might feel like a really nice stretch for the hip, and we can stay right here. If it's okay with our shoulders, we could lift that top arm toward the ceiling. For this one, my neck doesn't like turning, so I just cue looking toward the ceiling with the eyes. So we're using our eye muscles too. Breathing, looking straight ahead, hand to the hip, hand to the floor. Option to stay with a kneeling knee on this next part, or we can go to the straight leg lunge. So curl the toes under, lift that back knee. If we want to go to the straight leg lunge, I'm going to stay with the kneeling knee on one side and do the straight leg on the other side. So you choose which one you want to do and do the same on both sides. Bring hands to the bent knee thigh. Bring hands to heart center. Could reach out in front. Could lift overhead. Could look toward the ceiling, lifting that heart center toward the ceiling if you choose to go more. Firm the core, bring it back to vertical body, hands at heart center, hands to bent knee thigh, hands to floor, and we can step that back foot forward. We're into our forward fold again, lifting halfway up to monkey pose. Exhale, forward fold, circle sweep out, lifting up through monkey to vertical body. Bringing hands to heart center, settling into our chair. So people have requested some footwork in addition to what we do normally in yoga. And so lifting and lowering the heels in our chair position was one nice footwork thing that we came up with. We could also lift the heels and hold in balancing chair. We could also straighten legs and feet and hold in our straight legs and feet. Or we could go heels up and down from straight legs and feet. So lots of different options to work on the feet in slightly different ways. Then let both heels go to the floor, lifting up through midline, grabbing that positive energy, bringing it into our heart centers, bending knees, swan dive, forward fold, right foot back to lunge, left foot back, down dog. We can do our three-legged plank flow, one knee coming forward, three-legged plank, stepping back to down dog, second knee coming forward, stepping back. Another variation could bring the knee to the outside of the elbow. A third variation could bring the knee underneath us, going toward that opposite elbow. So we could do one more of each, or do three more of your favorite. Or you could even hold in down dog, or take a rest in child's pose. You decide. This is your practice. Pausing in down dog the next time we're even on both sides. Breathing. Coming forward into plank. Holding here if you can. Knees could go to the floor. Breathing. Then do let the knees come to the floor. Give those wrists a little rest. Shake out those hands. We can fold the edge of the left edge of the mat over so that left knee has some cushion, or you don't have to do that. Kneeling thigh, already getting a stretch. Could lift and lengthen out of the hips if we want to have more. Could look toward the ceiling. Could do more of a back arch, going toward that half of a camel pose. If you feel comfortable doing that, if you have any pain doing any of the additional things I cue, you don't have to do any of them. Firm the core, bring it back to vertical. Hand that's out on that bent knee can slide back toward the hip, and we're massaging all the organs in the other direction. Breathing. Inhale and lengthen to unwind. Hands can go to the floor. Left hand can stay on the floor. Right hand could lift to that right hip, and this hip might be getting a really nice stretch, and we can just stay here. Option to lift that top arm toward the ceiling. And then just with our eyes, look toward the ceiling. So we're giving those eyes a little bit of exercise. Breathing. Looking straight ahead, hand to the hip, hand to the floor. And again, you could stay with the kneeling lunge. If you keep that knee on the floor or curl the toes under, lift that back knee to a straight leg lunge. Hands could be the same, whether you're in kneeling or straight leg lunge. Hands could come to bent knee thigh. Hands could come to heart center. Option to reach out in front. Option to lift overhead. Could look toward the ceiling. Breathing. Looking straight ahead, bringing hands to heart center. Hands to bent knee thigh. Hands to floor. Let's step that back foot forward to forward fold. Feet are hip width apart and parallel. Let's lift halfway up. Monkey pose. Exhale, forward fold, circle sweep out, lifting up through monkey to vertical body. Bringing hands to heart center. Good job, everybody. We'll start our standing poses. So feet are hip width apart and parallel. Turn that left foot out to a 45, so kind of pointing toward the corner of the mat. And we can step that left foot back. We go back and forth. Find a good spot that feels just right. We want a little bit of work for that Achilles tendon and heel, but not too much. We don't want to strain anything. So firm left buttock, firm core, finding your foot stance, bringing hands to heart center. Pressing hands inward, we find that core support again. You can feel that core engage when we press those hands together. So keep that core support, breathing. And lower those arms down. Roll those shoulders back and down, lift the elbows up, hands on the sides or fists on the sacrum, pressing elbows toward each other. Firm left buttock and core, lifting up out of the hips, could look toward the ceiling here, pressing elbows toward each other. So we're opening that heart center on the front side of the shoulders. Breathing. Firm the core, bring it back to vertical, shake out those arms. Let's do some arm stretches. So reaching out in front, we'll do the straight arm stretch so we can use the other hand to help that arm have more stretch. And again, we're stretching that shoulder blade area. Reaching out in front, second straight arm stretch, breathing. Reaching out in front, palms away from midline, out to T position, lowering those arms, shaking them out. So we're going to keep that heart center open again, roll those shoulders back and down, heart center open, but we're going to bend at the hip crease and come to a forward fold over that bent knee thigh. Hands can come to the bent knee thigh. We could stay here. We could let head and shoulders go forward. If we like standing splits, hands could go to the floor. We could lift that back leg up to our standing splits. Could bend that knee, do that sundog flow if you want that lifted leg to move a little more, or just hold steady. Then that back foot to the floor, pressing off that bent knee thigh, hands to heart center. We're going to do some tricep work next. So the back of the upper arm, straighten those arms, reaching toward the floor. Don't hyperextend your elbow. Just reach toward the floor strongly, then bend the elbows again, hands at heart center. We can stay here in our warrior one stance and do this, or we could pop up to our warrior three or just lean forward in and out of going toward warrior three. If we go to warrior three and do our tricep work, our bodies and legs are parallel with the floor. Lifted leg is parallel with the floor. We're flowing those arms, or we're just going in and out of warrior three, warrior one. Then let that back foot go to the floor again in our warrior one stance, hands at heart center, firm left buttock and core. Let's find our warrior one. Finally, reach up through midline, grab that positive energy, bring that positive energy and the arms into the shoulder sockets. Firm left buttock and core, looking toward the ceiling, maybe that ah breath. Looking straight ahead, bringing hands to heart center. Bending knees, stepping forward, can dance it out, jog it out, walk it out, wiggle around a little bit, shake it out. Just noticing if you have any kinks anywhere in your body you want to let go of, just try to shake them out. All right. No, that was not a yoga pose, but it's kind of fun. All right, feet are parallel, hip width apart. Second side, step that right foot to a 45 and step that right foot back. And again, finding Pada Bandha. So find that good foot placement, foot lock, firm right buttock, firm core, hands to heart center. And we'll do that overhead stretches, reaching out in front, lifting overhead, bending elbows, grabbing onto that first elbow, hand that's free can come toward the center of the back, could lift that whole side of the ribs, breathing. Firm the core, straight up arms, bend the elbows, grab onto that second elbow. The hand that's free can work its way toward the center of the back, or maybe you don't go that far. It's okay. Tricep stretch, feeling the back of the upper arm, getting a stretch. Could do that whole side body stretch if you want to add that. Firm the core, lifting up, palms away from midline, coming down, shaking out those arms. Rolling shoulders back and down, lifting elbows up, hands on the sides or fists on the sacrum, pressing elbows toward each other. Keep that firm right buttock and firm core. So we're not going to bend strongly here in the lower back. We're going to lift the heart center toward the ceiling. Press those elbows toward each other. Could look toward the ceiling. Breathing. Firm the core even more to bring ourselves back to vertical. Heart center can keep open as we forward fold over that bent knee thigh. Hands to bent knee thigh. Could stay here. Could let the head and shoulders round forward. Could stay here. Hands could go to the floor in front of us. If we want to do our standing splits, we can lift that back leg. Could flow that lifted knee if we want to do that sun dog flow. Then let that back foot go to the floor if we lifted it. Press off that bent knee thigh, hands to heart center. We'll go back to that tricep work. Straighten those arms, reaching toward the floor, hands back to heart center. Could do this in warrior one, could go back and forth toward warrior three, or pop up into our warrior three and hold. You might notice one side cooperates more than the other. On any given day, that can be so. It's like normal. So don't feel bad. Don't give yourselves a hard time. And then let that back foot go to the floor, hands to heart center. And we'll find that warrior one, reaching up, grabbing that positive energy. It's out there, bringing that positive energy and the arms into the shoulder sockets strongly. Firm right buttock and core, looking toward the ceiling. Maybe that ah breath. Ah. Looking straight ahead, bringing hands to heart center, bending knees, stepping forward, dance it out, jog it out, walk it out, wiggle around a little bit. All right. And let's warm up our hip flexors a little bit. So hands on hips, steady gaze out in front of us, bend that left knee, open that thigh to the side, toes can stay on the floor, bring it back. Could lift that knee higher, opening to the side, could be in our tree pose position. Step it back down. Could lift higher yet, go to that figure four position and then step it down. Usually I do that twice on each side, but we'll just do it once in the interest of time today. So feet on the floor again, bend that right knee, open that thigh to the side, bring it back. Could lift that knee higher, opening to that tree pose position, bring it back. Could lift higher yet, figure four position, bring it back and walk it out. So then we're going to do our triangle pose. So step the feet wide, toes pointing at the long edge of the mat, turning left toes toward the short edge of the mat. So our heel can be lined up with the arch. If that's too awkward for the hips, we could line up heel to heel. So I like heel to arch myself, but you can move that front foot back and forth if you need to. Hands on the hips, and we want to shift those hips side to side. We'll shift the hips to the left, and bottom arm presses into that front thigh. Top arm can stay on that top hip or lift up, and we are in our triangle pose. Breathing and holding here, could look toward the ceiling with the eyes. If you want to go to half moon with me, you can, or stay here in triangle. Looking straight ahead, top hand can come to the hip. Looking to the floor, bend that front knee, let the body weight shift forward, heel toe that back foot forward. We lift that back leg, hands can stay on hip and thigh, or we can reach out to our half moon, your choice. Then back foot to the floor. If you're still in triangle, bend that top elbow to lift up to vertical body. And then toes pointing at the long edge of the mat. Let's heel toe those feet together and give those feet a little more work. Lower those arms, shake them out. We'll do our second side of our triangle, possibly into our half moon or just staying in triangle. Feet are stepping wide, turning right toes toward the short end of the mat. And hands to hips, we'll shift those hips side to side. If you feel like you went too wide, scoot the feet closer together. If you want to shift heel to heel, you can, or stay heel to arch with that front and back foot. And then shifting to the left with those hips, left shoulder stays open. Triangle comes from the hip crease, so it's not the rib cage that moves. Keep the rib cage long and strong. Bottom arm pressing into thigh, top arm lifting up to our triangle pose, Utthita Trikonasana. Option to look toward the ceiling, just use the eyes. This one's a little awkward to turn the head. If you want to go to half moon with me, look straight ahead, top hand to the hip, look to the floor, bend that front knee, and we can heel toe that back foot forward as we lift that back leg. And we can reach those arms out or keep hands on hip and thigh, half moon, or we're still in triangle. Back foot can go to the floor if we were in half moon. If we're in triangle, bend that top elbow and lift up to vertical body. Toes pointing at the long edge of the mat. Heel toe those feet together. Arms can stay up, working those arms a little more, or lower them down. And lowering those arms, shaking them out. Let's go ahead and do our Warrior Two series. Stepping feet wide, toes pointing at the long edge of the mat, turning left toes toward the short edge of the mat. And I like to do this knee bending thing, bending that front knee, let it go out over the toes. You don't want to ever balance there, but we can let the range of motion go to where it's comfortable. And then we're going to be with awareness, stacking the knee over the ankle or knee behind the ankle. So stack joints are always the strongest position to hold in. We're going to hold in our Warrior Two. So let that front knee be strong. Lengthening inner thigh, shortening outside of thigh. Find the core. So lifting the base of the pelvis up into the pelvis. So building the pose from the bottom up. Lifting arms up to shoulder height. Anchoring in, reaching out. Breathing in our Warrior Two, Virabhadrasana 2. Front arm reaching forward and up to our reverse warrior, breathing. Bend that top elbow, coming back to Warrior Two. Finding that strong Warrior Two, finding all that internal support. Front hand to bent knee thigh, back arm out and up for extended side angle. We can stay right here. If we want to go deeper, it's just like triangle. We bend at the hip crease. Elbow might go to thigh, bottom arm might press into thigh. Come back up to a higher elevation if you went too far. It's okay. You decide. Extended side angle, breathing. Bend that top elbow, firm the core, lifting up, straighten that front leg. Toes pointing forward, heel toe those feet together. Arms can stay up or arms can come down. Shaking them out. Then we'll do our second side. Step those feet wide, toes pointing at the long edge of the mat. Turning right toes toward the short edge. And again, we'll flow that knee to a bend and straighten. We just want to bring awareness to stacking the joints. So bring that knee over the ankle and keep it there. Or behind the ankle is safe as well. We could widen those feet farther apart if we want to, but we don't have to. Engage the core, lifting the base of the pelvis up into the pelvis. That's also called Mula Bandha, engaging Mula Bandha. Lifting arms up, breathing. Reverse warrior, front arm reaching forward and up, getting that nice side stretch in our reverse warrior. Bend that top elbow, coming back to Warrior Two, anchoring in, reaching out, lengthening inner thigh, shortening outside of thigh. Finding our breath. Then we'll go for that extended side angle, also called Parshvakonasana. Top arm lifting up, could stay here in a more elevated Parshvakonasana or bend at the hip crease. Elbow could go to thigh, bottom arm could press into thigh. You choose. That top shoulder stays open toward the ceiling. And to come out, firm the core, bend that top elbow, lifting to vertical body, gazing out over that front hand for our last warrior two. Straighten that front leg, toes pointing forward, heel, toe, those feet together. Walk it out, dance it out, jog it out, wiggle around a little. All right, we're gonna work toward the floor for our cool down. We'll do a little more work, but not a lot. So finding downward dog and walking those heels up and down, releasing neck and head. My favorite stretch, the jazzy dog. So if you haven't done this before, bend the knees, step the left foot to the center of the mat, side to side center, right foot around the back. And we are pinky toe to pinky toe. We can lift that right hip toward the ceiling, stretching that iliotibia band that's on the outside of that right leg. Ease up on that stretch, come back to a regular down dog. Bend the knees, step the right foot to the center of the mat, side to side center, left foot around the back. And we are pinky toe to pinky toe. We can lift that left hip toward the ceiling. Stretching that IT band, breathing. Ease up on that, unwind those legs. Let those knees come to the floor. We can find child's pose. Breathing in our child's pose, releasing the lower back, the hip area. And pressing back up to kneeling, we'll swing those legs around. Let's do a little boat pose for our core work today. So when we do our boat pose, we have the feet flexed, the knees are bent, the hips are bent, and we try to have that heart center open. That's why it's so good. And we feel that core work that we're feeling when we have that heart center open. We can let go of those thighs if we want to have those arms parallel with the floor. For a release from our boat pose, you can grab the back of the thighs, could bring the heart center forward, could bring the head forward. So there's lots of variations you can do in your boat pose. So let's come back to open heart center. We can lift those shins up to parallel with the floor. Again, we can continue to hang on to the back of the thighs. We could have those arms come alongside the thighs. Open that heart center, keep that heart center open. That's the key. Breathing. Then grab the thighs, heels to the floor, body can come forward, head can come forward. We'll do a third variation, heart center open, lifting shins to parallel with the floor. Could stay with any of the previous ones. You don't have to do all three, but straightening those legs. So we're sitting in a V position. Our body and legs are in a V position relative to each other. And we can let go of those thighs. Woohoo! And grab the thighs, heels to the floor, let the body come forward, head come forward. And let's lower down onto the floor. Let's lie on one side. We'll do some leg work here, lying down. So we're lying with hips stacked, feet stacked, hand on the floor in front of us. We can lift and lower that top leg. Breathing. Then we can lift and hold. Top hand could come to that top hip or reach out onto that thigh. Working on our stabilizer muscles, balancing on our side here. And lowering that leg, hand to the floor in front of us. We can lift both feet off the floor. Keep the feet together this time. Lift both feet up off the floor. This one is harder to balance with, but you can try it. Hand on the hip crease, hand on the thigh if we want to straighten that arm. Breathing. Lowering those legs. Top hand to the floor in front of us if we lifted it to the hip. Top knee to the floor in front of us. And we can lift and lower that bottom leg. And we are working our adductors. Breathing. We can lift and hold, no balancing involved on this one. And lower that leg. We can bend the bottom knee. So we're going to stack the knees, stack the feet, and we can keep those feet together. We can lift and lower that top knee. And we're doing our clamshell flow here. Breathing, working our hip rotators. Could lift that knee and hold it in the air. No balancing involved again, but we're definitely, when we hold a pose, we feel those muscles that we're using to hold in place. Lower that knee. Now let's straighten those legs, stacking hips and top foot can rotate. So external rotation, toes are pointing toward the ceiling. And we can lift and lower in that externally rotated position. Could lift and hold. Hand could come to that knee. And then let's bend that knee. Foot can come to the floor and we'll find our fallen tree pose. So foot can be right on the knee when we're in this fallen position because our knee can't push out to the side, right? Top arm could reach overhead and we're in our fallen tree pose position. And then bring that hand back to the bent knee thigh. We can lift that leg again. This is Anantasana pose. We might reach up and grab the toes, but don't let your hip come out of alignment when that happens. Lowering that leg. We can roll onto the belly and roll to the other side, but I always kind of sit up and then come back down in order to still keep watching the screen. So top hand can come to the floor in front of us. We're stacking shoulders and hips again on this side. We can lift and lower that top leg, working our abductors, our abductors in that top leg. We can lift and hold. Hand can come to hip or straighten out onto that thigh. Could hold here, or that hand could still be on the floor in front of us. And lowering that leg. Hand to the floor in front of us. We can lift both those feet away from the floor at the same time. Keep the feet together. And hand can come to hip or thigh. Working on the stabilizer muscles. So there's a word in yoga, samskaras, and that is the channel between the brain and the muscles. So we're cleaning out those samskaras by trying to hold in these balancing positions, lowering those legs. Hand to the floor in front of us, knee to the floor in front of us. We can lift and lower that bottom leg, working the adductors, the adductors in that bottom leg. Then we can lift and hold. And we can lower that leg. We'll bend that bottom knee. We'll stack the knees, stack the feet, keep the feet together. We'll lift and lower that top knee. And we'll do our clamshell flow by working on our hip rotators with this motion. We can lift and hold. Again, no balance involved, but we can definitely feel the muscles that are working, the hip rotator muscles working in this pose. Lower the knee. Straighten the legs, and we'll externally rotate that top leg. We can lift and lower that top leg. Breathing, working a whole different group of muscles in a different way. Lifting and holding, hand to the hip or thigh. Definitely feels like different muscle combinations, right? Then lowering that leg. We'll bend that knee and we'll find our fallen tree pose. Top arm can reach overhead. We can think about lengthening the inner thigh, shortening the outside of the thigh if we want to work this one a little harder. Bring that top hand back to that bent knee thigh. And we'll straighten that leg toward the ceiling. This is Anantasana pose. Breathing. And lowering that leg. And let's roll onto our backs this time. We will proceed toward our final relaxation pose. So I just like to do a little yoga nidra here at the end of class. So bringing knees into chest, we'll get our stretches done first. In our reclining child's pose, you could stay here. Knees could go wide. We could point those toes outward and we're in our reclining frog. If any of these stretches feel really good and you want to stay longer, feel free to do so. Happy baby is next. Bring those knees a little closer. Flexed feet can lift toward the ceiling. We can continue to hang on to the back of the thighs or reach up and grab onto the feet or toes. I like to draw those knees toward the floor on either side of the rib cage while keeping that tailbone close to the floor as well. So it's a really nice anchoring into the floor for that entire length of the back. Then straddle splits, reclining version. Legs go far apart, but toward the ceiling. We can rotate those feet. We can wiggle around those feet a little, and then hold steady. Flexed feet could grab onto thighs, calves, toes, whatever works for you. And then staff pose, reclining version, bringing those legs together, flat feet toward the ceiling, or we can point and flex a little bit if that feels good. And then hold steady. Again, hanging on to thighs, calves, or feet. Then butterfly pose, bottoms the feet together, knees out wide, breathing. And then let those feet come to the floor. So the most difficult pose for some people is this next one, which is final relaxation. So straightening out arms and legs. A lot of people think, oh, it's not worth it to just lay there on the floor, but it truly is. So take the time to do this. Lying flat on the floor, but sometimes our lower backs are not comfortable. Maybe that's why we don't like doing it. Bend those knees. The knees can stay against each other. We can widen those feet out to the outside edges of the mat. Hands can be alongside the body or on the belly, whichever one we've chosen. Or we could even roll to the side if that's our most comfortable position for today. And then we let go of our breath. Let go of our toes. Release the feet, the ankles, letting go of calves, thighs, shins. Releasing ankles, knees, hips. Letting go of hips, spine, rib cage. Releasing the rib cage and all the organs inside. Letting go of the shoulders, the arms, the hands. Releasing fingers, wrists, elbows. Letting go of the collarbone, the neck, and the head. Releasing the scalp, the forehead, the eyebrows. Letting go of that lower jaw, the chin, the tongue. Releasing the eyes, the cheeks, the temples. Finding that center of balance, the inner ears. Allowing that center of balance to relax and release. Just letting go. Body, mind, and spirit. Just letting go. Allowing the sound of the chimes to slowly bring us back. Wiggling fingers and toes. And deepening the breath. As we're ready, perhaps bringing knees to chest or just gently rolling to the side, resting there for a breath or two. I'll give you a thought for the day as you come back up. To understand union, you must understand separation. Union with another can only occur when we fully occupy our place in the world. Let yourself expand to fill your place so that coming together with loved ones can be that much sweeter. All right. Bringing hands to heart center, bringing peace, hope, and joy into your day. Have a great one. Namaste. Thank you all for coming today. I'm going to shut off the recording. And then we can chat if you need, have any questions. Stop recording.